He's Trevor Sikkema, lead NFL draft analyst for PFF, also co-host of the NFL Stock Exchange. Trevor, excited to have you on Foxborough Rush, my man. How are we doing today?
I'm doing great, guys. I appreciate you having me on the show. I'm excited for this one.
This will be a great convo. You guys just recently, you and Connor Rogers on Stock Exchange, did your own first and second round mock, so God bless you guys for going 2 full rounds. But it was awesome listening to that. I want to take you through the hypothetical. Let's say something insane happens, and let's say we see 3 quarterbacks go in the top 3. Jackson Dart earns his way to not just move in front of Shedeur Sanders, but someone takes Shedeur at 2 and then Jackson Dart at 3 or vice versa. Cam Ward goes. The New England Patriots, as we focus on this pod, at number 4, they have Will Campbell, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter sitting in front of them. Oof. You are the man that puts in the final card. You have the final say. You and Mike Vrabel are in a great relationship. What are you doing, Trevor?
Yeah, we're buds. I mean, I've seen Mike Vrabel down at the Senior Bowl. I mean, I've seen him walking around and everything, said what's up to him before. He has no idea who I am. But, I've said what's up to him in passing before, so that makes total sense that we would have that relationship and he would give me that sort of power. It would be very intriguing to trade back. I would have the phones open for probably 15 straight minutes, the entire time that I would be allowed to have there. And my phones would be open and I would listen to all sorts of offers. I mean, I think that Carolina jumping up from number 8 could make sense. I think that, certainly maybe the New York Jets want to do the same thing, make a statement, go up and get the player that they want. The Chicago Bears, if they want to get aggressive. You're talking all these teams probably on the tail end of the top 10. I don't know if you want to get too much further past the top 10, honestly, because New England still needs to get a pretty good player. I'd think about trading down, but ultimately, I don't know, especially because it wouldn't be for a quarterback. I don't think we would get to a price that I'd be happy with taking over drafting Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter's my number 1 overall player that I have in this class. He's just a rare athlete. I mean, even beyond the fact that he played both sides of the ball and he played them so well over the last couple of years at Jackson State and then Colorado. It's just that he's the type of athlete that he is, the playmaker mentality that he have. We hear that from just some of the greatest athletes of all time. Sometimes, of course, they have to be extremely talented, but it's then that mental ability and how they process the game and just who they are as a playmaker that puts them in those top tier categories as some of the best that we can name. And I feel as though Travis has that sort of mentality to him. So I would not be passing on this player for much. And in New England's case, if he got to number 4, I'd be picking Travis Hunter for them.
Trev, I'm with you. You are just preaching to the choir, my friend. I've been all over Travis Hunter to the Patriots. I hope it happens on draft night. But I have to ask you, what's up with the Jackson Dart stuff? First of all, I think Shedeur Sanders, let me start there. He's being disrespected throughout this entire process. I still think the gap between Cam Ward and him is not that far apart, personally. I know Cam Ward's a little bit better of an athlete, but I think Shedeur is going to be a really good high-end pro quarterback. And this Jackson Dart stuff, who I do like, but it's still a system there at Ole Miss. What am I missing? I guess 2-parter. Why Jackson Dart is rising up, and also why is Shedeur continually getting disrespected throughout this process? What am I missing, Trev?
So I'll start with Jackson Dart. And Jackson Dart to me kind of feels like, hey, we just need to talk about the quarterback position. Now, me saying that feels more insulting than it probably should be because like you said, there are things that he brings to the table that you could like. He's got a baseball background to him. He's a very natural athlete. He plays with a lot of moxie, a lot of confidence. And I've loved him in Lane Kiffin's system. Now, he teaches him how to read defenses a little bit, but it's more of, hey, we're going to put this defender in conflict. Read if they're coming up, you put it over his head. If he's staying back, you hit him underneath. And so he's got an understanding of those things. But there's some late game situations. I know everybody points to the Florida game, but there's some other games as well where he sort of struggles in those 2-minute drills, which can be not only end game situations, but also end of half situations, right? Where, okay, things might be going a little bit off script and you have to sort of be able to make a play. Sometimes he doesn't always have the best judgment there. I don't want to say that he can't get better in that area because I feel like he has over the years, but it's tough to just guarantee that that's immediately going to get better at the NFL level. So I think the reason why the NFL is trying to sort of pump him up here is, one, we know that people just need to talk about quarterbacks, and there's often more teams that need franchise caliber quarterbacks than we have to pick in draft classes. I think this is probably an example of it. There are things to like about his game. I just think it's so much more comfortably mid to late day 2 area, right? And instead, now we've got to talk about him as a top 10 potential pick because of teams that are so desperate at quarterback. When it comes to Shedeur, I like Shedeur. I want to be very clear. My pro comp for him, he reminds me a lot of Teddy Bridgewater. And I love Bridgewater when he was coming out of Louisville. I thought that the things that he brought to the table, the ice in his veins, how he was able to read defenses, how he could stand in the pocket real tough and take hits and deliver throws, like Shedeur does a lot of those things well, but both, like Bridgewater, both are a little bit limited when it comes to escapability and mobility there, and I don't think they have elite arms. So to me, when I think of Shedeur, I think he could absolutely be a starting quarterback in the NFL, but is he going to be a tier 1, tier 2 starter? That's where you sort of lose me, or that's the highest end of his of the possibilities that we could have with Shedeur, where, again, I like him. I wouldn't be picking him in the top 5. He's another guy that, for example, Pittsburgh sitting there at 21. They kind of need a quarterback. I'd probably think about him there at 21. I think about him at the back end of the first round. I think about him at the beginning of the second round. But that's where I am with him. I like him as a player, but I think he is more of just like he's going to be a solid starter for you at the NFL level. He'll give you some big moments, but I don't know if he has that get out of trouble type of arm talent to him. And that's what worries me taking that step to the next level in the NFL.
I like the Bridgewater comp. I want to go back to Travis Hunter since we do agree on that. So let's say Patriots take him at 4. What's your mentality of how you play this kid? Because you and I are in lockstep in terms of this team just needs playmakers, period. So are you leaning more wide receiver and then packages for him at corner, or vice versa? What are you thinking in terms of the usage if the Patriots do draft him at 4th?
So at this point in time, to be honest with you, I'd let him play both and just figure out if he can do it. Because if he can't, you can always dial it back, right? So I'd almost give him, the full buffet of show us what you could do with your talent level. But for the Patriots specifically, it is a little bit interesting. I think what you should do with Travis Hunter is play him full-time as a corner, because then you can have a handful of plays, like you mentioned, where he could play wide receiver for you. I don't really think you can do that vice versa. I don't know if you can have him be a wide receiver full-time and then just say, hey, yeah, we're playing man coverage, just go out there and cover this guy. It doesn't, the position doesn't really work like that. The defensive side of the ball doesn't really work like that, but he's a special player, so I'd probably, again, try it and let it fail before I don't try it at all. But for the Patriots, with them signing Carlton Davis and them already having Christian Gonzalez, you got a good nickel that you feel good about as well. Like, I wonder if they would just really rather have him be a playmaker on the offensive side of the ball. And I think he'd be incredibly productive. So in a vacuum, I'd rather him be a full-time starting corner with a handful of snaps at wide receiver. But for the Patriots specifically, becoming that wide receiver 1 probably has more value than saying that he's going to start for you full-time at corner.
Yeah, I love that point. And even Mike Vrabel has talked about his vision with the Carlton Davis is a cat defense. You got that cat, I got that cat.
Right.
Him and Christian Gonzalez. And if he's a full-time wide receiver, the money downs. 3rd down, 4th down, red zone. Hey, we're going to run man. You got this guy, and he's really good in the slot. So we could keep talking about Travis Hunter. I literally just tweeted out a quick mock I did myself where I got him at 4. You being at the Senior Bowl, you being at the Combine, is that a reality, though? Because I just can't fathom that you, me, and Travis are talking about just gushing over Travis Hunter, and we're going to see 3 different front offices go, yeah, we'll pass on him. We'll take Cam Ward, we'll take Shedeur Sanders, and we'll take out. I just can't fathom that happening. From what you've heard, from what you picked up, and what you see, do you think there's a real path of him falling to number 4?
I will not say that something is impossible, because every single year the NFL draft teaches me that I cannot speak in absolutes when it comes to what's going to happen on night 1 of the NFL draft. I think it's pretty unlikely, just because of what we talked about here. If we all love him so much that we'd sprint the card in at number 4 if he's on the board at number 4, you got to think these other teams would want to as well. And the only reason why, in my opinion, we're even entertaining this conversation is because of the desperate need of quarterbacks for all 3 of the teams that are picking above the Patriots. Ultimately, I think that I'm coming to grips with it could be a coin flip here, that we get 2 out of those 3 picks are going to be a quarterback selection. I think it's very unlikely still that we would get 3 out of 3 be quarterback selections. And if there is one that isn't a quarterback, whether that's the Giants or whether that's the Cleveland Browns, I think that Travis Hunter will be the pick for one of those teams. He's just too good to pass up, in my opinion. And again, you just talk about the rareness of who he is as a football player. Even for as great as I think Abdul Carter can be in the NFL, I wouldn't be passing on a player like that. So there's always a chance. There's no doubt about it. But I feel like it's pretty unlikely that all three teams would pass on a kid as talented as him.
And think situationally with the Giants. They took care of their front seven. They have a good defensive line. They have Malik Neighbors. They need help on the back end. Perfect thing, Travis Hunter full-time corner. You line up Travis Hunter opposite of Malik Neighbors. No matter who your quarterback is, all of a sudden the guys that they've been in on, now they'll be coming to New York. So say it happens the way you're mapping it out, because Abdul Carter is elite, Travis Hunter is elite, Cam Ward's going to go top 3. What do you make of Will Campbell? Because he has a lot of fans inside the building in one Patriot Place, Gillette Stadium. What do you make of Will Campbell as a prospect?
I love him, man. I really do. I mean, like, just the way that this guy approaches the position, you absolutely love it. And I mean, if I think that, a lot of people bring up the Joe Thomas example right? When they talk about offensive tackles who ended up being great, that didn't hit the arm length or the length thresholds. Now I want to say this right off the bat. Will Campbell's arm length and wingspan are much less than Joe Thomas's, like just right off the bat. So it's not like it's completely an apples to apples. But in his defense, the reason why Joe Thomas was able to overcome some length deficiencies for playing in the pros is how he approaches the game. Will Campbell has that. Will Campbell is cut from the same cloth in that regard, and he gets asked these questions about his arm length and everything. And the thing is I love listening to him at his podium, and I've listened to some podcasts and some other episodes where he sort of talked about the arm length, and he just goes, "You guys aren't breaking any news to me. It's not like it's like, what do you mean my arms are short? It's like he's sitting here thinking that was never the case. I mean, he knows that, and he even said, he's like, look." I don't really lose because my arms are short. I lose because of other different things. Is it an area of my game where I can say, okay, I can win with length? No, I can't, but I just have to be conscious of that. So what I'll do is I'll go into the lab and into the film room the week before I'm watching a guy, and I'll say, okay, does this guy like to win with length? Because if he does, this is how I need to disrupt him. If he doesn't win with length, okay, then I don't need to worry about it as much. So the thing about it is he is so high football IQ that he can mitigate a lot of those lack of length reps that you would see. And so to me, he is somebody that he is a true football player in how he approaches the game, how he studies the game. Obviously, he's a great athlete from what we saw at the Combine as well. I think he could play tackle in the NFL, and I think if he's not going to play tackle, he'd be an all-pro caliber type of guard for you. I've even talked about him potentially playing center and being an all-pro center if that's something that he is comfortable with. So I really think the world of Will Campbell, and whether or not you draft him at 4 simply comes down to, well, if he's a guard, do you think it's worth it for you at number 4? If you're just trying to draft the best offensive lineman, he's my top offensive lineman in this class.
Wow, love that breakdown. And that's, I think, a great point that you make of, all right, I know the length is where my shortcoming is. I need to be guys other ways. And he embraces that. You did tweet out, and I'm not doing this gotcha thing, and because I loved the context that you gave to it when measurements came out at the Combine. From you tweeting, Campbell's 77 3/8 inch wingspan would also be the shortest wingspan of any offensive tackle at the Combine since at least 2011.
Wow.
So with that, that's a shorter wingspan than Joe Thuney, who's bumped inside. Yep. Peter Skoronski, bumped inside. Yep. Gray Zabel, shorter wingspan than him. He will be bumped inside. When you saw those measurements, and a guy that's been at the Senior Bowl, I know they've been up and down. It's insane how inconsistent the measurements are. Is that a massive red flag, though? Or do you think because of what you just laid out, and I understand it, that no. This guy can be an outlier to this wingspan?
Well, first of all, you can never prove that I tweeted that. You can't prove it. There's no way. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just messing with you. Trying to use my own words against me.
There's the edit button here. No, but I think that's great. I think it's great what you laid out, because I love that comp to a Joe Thomas. I do.
But look, you are 100% right, and there's a reason why I tweet that out, is because you have to understand, we're not just talking about Will Campbell, his arms are a little short. No, his arms aren't just a little bit short. They're historically short for over the last 15 years of NFL drafts. So you just need to think about that part. But we have seen in the past, whether it's been Elijah Vera Tucker, for example, or you mentioned Joe Thuney, like these guys who have had to scoot out the tackle in a pinch, who have been able to hold their own because of how well they approach the position and how smart they are. So to me, I've always been very confused about why Peter Skoronski did not get more of a shot to play offensive tackle in the NFL. And this is now 2 regimes with the Tennessee Titans, both Vrabel's regime and Brian Callahan's, that they're like, nope, he's a guard, 100%. We're not even trying him at tackle, even when they have had offensive tackle needs. So perhaps the Vrabel connection there makes you think that if the Patriots are drafting Campbell, they're going to draft him as an interior offensive lineman, which again, I say that doesn't mean that he's not the right pick at number 4. It just means that you have to be okay with that, because I think a lot of fans look at it and you go, well, you don't draft a guard at number 4 overall. Well, if you think this guy's going to be a perennial all-pro player, you do, because you had the worst offensive line in the NFL last year. You gave up the most pressures of anybody in the NFL. So you're not going to pass on a guy like that just because, all right, maybe, because, well, and here's the thing too. It also sort of depends on what they think of, let's say, Armand Membu or Kellen Meigs Jr., right? Because if you love both of those guys, like if you look at Armand Membu and you go, that's also an all-pro offensive tackle, then all of a sudden the conversation does become a little bit different. I'm okay with them drafting Will Campbell at number 4 if they clearly go, well, Will Campbell is the best offensive lineman in the class, and we think the other guys are good, but Will Campbell is that much better. Don't pass on that player just because you aren't exactly sure if he's a tackle or a guard. Your offensive line does not have the luxury at this point in time of you passing on a more talented player to be able to do that. So that's sort of the conversation. Everything's sort of contextual when you talk about where players would go for certain teams. And I think that's the correct context that we need to operate under when we're talking about Will Campbell in New England.
I just love that Trevor owned the tweet, explained both sides, and both made complete sense. I just wanted to say that to you, my man.
He owned it.
The edit button, it still says, that's like the 5th version of the tweet, though. I'm really confused.
We check receipts, Trev. Listen, here's a receipt for me that George will tell you. I can't stand talking offensive linemen. Now, if Will Campbell's there and Travis Hunter's off the board and Abdul Carter's off the board, by all means, okay, fine. Guard, tackle, doesn't matter to me. Center, whatevs. They need offensive line help, as you said. So I guess this is maybe a philosophical question, because you and I talked about Travis Hunter if he's there at 4, but none of us think he will be. How about Abdul Carter? I mean, look, Trev, if you're in a scenario where it's Will Campbell or Abdul Carter, what do you think the Patriots do? Because I know I'm going Abdul Carter because he feels potentially generational to me, although that foot does concern me. Everyone's not making a big deal out of it. Oh, nothing to it. I'm like, the hell it is. That concerns me a little. But if he's there at 4 and I'm the Patriots and I'm Mike Vrabel, who values the defensive side of the ball, I'm going after that kid. Do you see it that way, or is offensive line such an area of need? You could see Will Campbell going over Abdul Carter.
Yeah, so I'm not a doctor. I've watched the show Scrubs, but I don't think that legally qualifies me to assess his foot injury. So obviously, no, you're totally right. The foot injury has to check out for him, and it seems like it has, right? I mean, it was sort of reported that, hey, he might have to get surgery on it, and then it was like, okay, no, he doesn't. It could just heal up, and he could be fine long term. So as long as the foot checks out, we're all good to go. Let's operate in a world where that's the case.
Yes,
I would not let the signing of Harold Landry get in the way of me drafting Abdul Carter at number 4 if he is there. That would be my pick. I would pick him over Will Campbell. Even as much as I like Will Campbell, Abdul Carter is my number 2 overall player in this class. And in the first bucket, the first tier of prospects, if you will, it is Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. Like, that is it. Those are the top 2 players in this class. I think if you have an opportunity to pick them or somebody else, you're not really having that conversation fairly. I think it's one of those 2 guys. And so for as much as I really respect what the Patriots did, really leaning on the defensive side of the football, I think their defense and the floor of this team every single week is so much higher because of the additions that they have made through free agency. You get even better if Abdul Carter is there on the board for you, and you try to figure it out on the offensive line. Because here's the thing, too. The Patriots are in a spot where this is a multi-year rebuild. You brought in Mike Vrabel. He's going to bring in his philosophy. He's going to bring in his culture. That's at least a 2-year job here. So you brought in Morgan Moses, so you brought in a little bit of a veteran presence there. You're probably hoping that a couple of these young guys that they have on their offensive line can play better under this new coaching staff and this new regime with Mike Vrabel. And I think it's okay. I mean, obviously, you're like, protecting Drake is paramount on this team. There's no doubt about it. But I'm not letting that get me in the way of what should be a 1 to 2 year look, a 1 to 2 year project or plan to rebuild this team the way you want to. You made a couple of big splashes. You still got to hit offensive line. You still got to hit wide receiver as well. But there's time to be able to do that. You're not passing on Abdul Carter if he's there at number 4, in my opinion.
I love that. And the conversation we've just had in the past, we're basically all coming back to it's Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, or a left tackle, whoever you think is number one at 4. So that means, and you just brought it up with the wide receiver. The Patriots struck out on a wide receiver in free agency. They struck out on him trying to trade for one. They didn't even bid for DK Metcalf. But that means it's day 2 guys for them. There's Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, I absolutely love. Xavier Restrepo, really good too. Trey Harris. The day 2 wide receivers, who is that guy the Patriots, they need a target, they need a circle, picking 38th overall, could fall to them and that they have to get?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you mentioned a couple of the good ones. I mean, Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel from Iowa State are 2 that I think that they would absolutely love. And it sort of depends on what they want to do with their roster construction, right? Because it's a little bit interesting. You've got some younger guys. You got Pop Douglas. You've got Keishon Butte. You have the 2 guys from last year's drafted, Polk and Baker, who I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not ready to give up on those guys. I'm just not. Yeah. Like, they are too talented, and last year was too disappointing of those players. And so I think people are sort of writing them off there. They're like, oh, they signed Matt Collins and they got nobody else. Well, again, it's a whole new regime. Very clearly, the coaching staff last year just was not doing what they needed to do to develop players and put them in the right position to succeed. I've got a lot more faith in Vrabel because I've watched him do it, and I've watched Vrabel overachieve for a couple of years when he was with the Tennessee Titans. So I think Polk is in for a much better year. He was way too good at Washington to think that this is the reality of what he's going to be at the NFL level. I also love Baker when he was coming through, so it was really disappointing to me that he wasn't able to get on the field. I think that you've still got something from those guys. And so then it depends. It kind of comes down to you could pick best player available at the wide receiver position. You certainly could do that, but also who might complement the group here. Maybe they brought in Matt Collins to fully give them that flexibility to take whichever best receiver they think is there. A Jack Besh, the 2 guys from Iowa State, Xavier Restrepo, right? I think Alec Iomaner, my dude from Stanford, who's got the track background, he's got the size to him. Like, those are a handful of players that come to my mind that I think could be very productive in this system. It just depends on what production that they're going to get from some of the guys that they have on the roster right now.
Trevor, love all that. And you think about especially the coaches in the room, not just the wide receivers in the room. No more Tyler Hughes, first job at that position. It's Josh McDaniels. Yeah, he's the OC. He's a QB coach and wide receiver coach too. It's Todd Downing as a wide receiver coach. It's Thomas Brown coming from the Sean McVay coaching tree as a passing game coordinator. Much better coaches pouring into those prospects. He's Trevor Sikkema. You can catch him on the NFL Stock Exchange. Also catch him on Pro Football Focus as lead draft analyst. Trevor, awesome conversation. Appreciate you owning the past tweets. We all got those past tweets. Appreciate you hopping up Foxborough Rush, my man. We'd love to have you back on again.
You guys bring the receipts. I got to answer for them, but it was good to be on with you guys. I enjoyed the convo, man. Anytime.